from the Republican National Convention in Cleveland, Ohio 2016. It's FoxNews.com live streaming. We're here today with David Webb, Fox News contributor. You know him well. But David is also the host of the David Webb Show on Sirius XM Patriot. David, welcome.
Good to see you, Juan.
David, you had such an interesting thought on the next possible mayor for New York City.
Could it be a Trump? I mean, think about it. New York's had some guys like Ed Koch, a very respectable, true New Yorker. I liked Ed on the Democrat side. They've had Giuliani. They've had Bloomberg. But New Yorkers in what I call non-Democrat elections or non-Republican elections have elected non-Democrats. In other words, somebody could reach beyond, because the Republicans are outnumbered 10-1 in registration. But think of a Trump, the Trump name, the Trump brand, the Trump connection with New York City. Could a Trump run, pull independents, pull Democrats? I think it's possible.
Well, no, but you named one in particular.
I think Eric Trump's the guy. If I had to go to Vegas right now and put some money down on who I think goes into politics, I go against what I've heard is the conventional wisdom of a Donald Trump Jr. What I see in Donald Trump Jr. is more the businessman. Not that he's saying he couldn't go into it, but I see him being the businessman. Ivanka takes over the empire. I think that's pretty obvious. She's smart, capable, way beyond, I think, the favorite daughter, the favorite child, as far as the empire. I think Donald Jr. plays a huge role, but I think Eric Trump is the guy who makes that move. They're all successful kids.
You know, the reason we're having this conversation with David is because the children, Trump's children, have played such a large role at the Republican National Convention.
Yeah.
Most of them have been giving personal testimony to the idea that their dad's a good guy, not only a good guy, a good businessman, he's taught them well, and here they are so proud of their dad. In fact, it was Donald Jr. who put him over the top for the nomination.
Yes, it was.
So go through the Trump children and give me the David Webb readout on these kids.
I'll start where Governor Pence kind of left off when he basically said, look at the children. Donald Trump has raised a good, call it for lack of a better term, a good batch of children. They're all successful in their own right. They had to
wait a second, hold on. They all work for daddy.
Yeah, but that's okay. What's wrong with, your daddy's got an empire, you come and you work, but you know what they did? And they've said it. They hung the sheetrock. They worked. I know people who worked with Trump as partners. His kids go out. They learn how it happens. It's who he is.
Right.
He's a guy who likes to talk to cab drivers, likes to talk to the guys on the construction site. You look at who he is, and he's transmitted that to his children, and I think that gives them a solid grounding. There's nothing wrong with being a billionaire. There's nothing wrong with having a lot of money, but it's who you are that matters. And I you and I know this. Your family, and we've talked about our respective families. Mm-hmm. You look at a good family, it tells you something about who they are, and you really see a good family when you look at the Trump family.
Well, you didn't finish the lineup. So you said Ivanka, you think, takes over for her dad. She runs the company.
I think she runs the company.
You think Don Jr. might be mayor of New York?
I think Eric would.
Eric's
I think Eric would run.
Eric's the mayor.
Right.
Okay, so what happens to Don Jr.? Because you were saying earlier, the conventional wisdom at the Republican National Convention after his speeches, that young man has a future in politics.
It's not that I don't think he could do it, but what I've heard and kind of listened gives me a sense that he becomes more the person with Ivanka, who kind of guides the Trump. There are many aspects of the Trump empire, and I see based on his roles that he's played, I think he stays in the business end of it. You never know, but I still think Eric's the one. There's something about him that says he could step into this role.
Okay. Finish up the rest of the kids.
Okay, now we've got the youngest daughter, whose name just escapes me for a second.
What's her name? I'm forgetting. Okay.
I know, and it just escapes me. You make me nervous.
Tiffany
Trump.
Tiffany.
She graduates from college, goes on. She's beginning to find her way out. She steps out on the stage here at the convention.
Right.
She gives a brilliant speech for a young woman. They're all poised, and I'm going to give an example of where I think the Trump kids demonstrate their poise and their bearing. And it was when there were some technology issues during the speech.
Oh, yeah, with the teleprompter.
Right, with the teleprompter and the screens and everything,
right.
And the screens went down all around. And I didn't see anything phase the
No, in
Trump.
fact, you know what? I saw Trump. He got upset for the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
But what it continued with the speech,
right.
Practice, knew his speech. I've always said this about Donald Trump, whether you like him or don't like him politically, anyone out there, when you look at him and you look at his family, he's the billionaire who gets the blue collar and everywhere in between. He's known. I know people who work construction sites for his companies or on jobs. He gets out there, he walks with them, he gets his feet in the cement, he talks to them, he wants to understand how it works. That tells you something about him.
David, let me just, your audience at XM Patriot, a lot of Tea Party people, and you've been involved with Tea Party issues. One of the great controversies here at the convention, Ted Cruz, who sees himself as a real Tea Party man. And in fact, he won in Texas as a Tea Party candidate.
Right, he was supported heavily by the local Tea Parties.
But today, Sarah Palin is tweeting, delete your Ted Cruz account. What do you make of this?
First of all, call it two figures fighting on Twitter in 140 characters. I actually don't care. I don't care whether she tweets or he deletes. I look at it from a strategic point of view. The question to be asked, and time may tell more, did Ted Cruz do damage to himself politically? I addressed the Washington State delegation this morning. I took their Q&A. They had a lot of Cruz supporters. They still have some never-Trumpers. But a lot of people have said, Ted, while there was a back and forth and hard-fought politics and some meanness there, actually a lot of meanness between the two of them, there's a point at which you look at the party and it's bigger than you, and that's an unselfish decision. Ted Cruz does what I would never do. I would never go to somebody else's kitchen and tell them their food sucks.
Right.
He came out on the stage, but I will say this. Ron Paul. Ron Paul didn't get to speak.
Right.
Trump let Ted Cruz speak. He gave him his chance to step out there and do what's right, and I think Ted Cruz did the wrong thing.
And so you think your audience is no longer behind Ted Cruz 2020?
Some will be. That's always the case. But I think more people will look at, right now our fundamental choice is Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton on November 8th, who is elected the President of the United States.
But Cruz must be thinking strategically people will forget.
Politicians are risk averse. They hope you forget short news cycles, long news cycles. I can't predict the future for Cruz, but I'll tell you, if he runs again for the presidency, people will remember what he did at the convention.
So it's not just that the Trump supporters who dominate this convention, obviously, because the anti-Trump people aren't here, but you believe that even true conservatives, people who are stalwarts in the Tea Party movement, who previously have said Ted Cruz is our champion, may turn away from him.
Whether they turn away or pass on to the next thing, it could be the same effect. He's going to get a good base of support in Texas. He's well grounded there. The question is, where does he go from there? I was at the Tea Party convention in South Carolina during the primaries. There were plenty of Tea Party supporters for Donald Trump, plenty for Cruz, so there will always be a base. But I think Cruz, he didn't look beyond himself, in my opinion, to the greater role of the party. And a compliment at the beginning of his speech, and this is the optics you and I often talk about,
right,
is not the end of the speech when you leave it there and you
yeah,
don't endorse. Vote your conscience was a swipe and a slap. And there's no other way to put it. No matter, he tried to walk it back this morning. Fox News, we were running his clips, but no matter how much he tries to walk it back, I think for a while it's going to smart. He has to go back to D.C. eventually. If there's a President Trump.
So who steps in then? Do you see someone else claiming the Tea Party mantle going beyond Donald Trump?
I think there's a lot of people to step into that, and the reason is what we've seen evolve since 2009. We've seen a lot more local elections. We saw Matt Bevins in Kentucky, the governor. We've seen other state legislatures step up. We saw the Tea Party and go up against Eric Cantor, an establishment guy, and replace him. We see guys like Mike Kelly from Pennsylvania 3 and others who received the support of the grassroots. So the Tea Party's not static. It's evolving. And as more and more people get into office, then more of those candidates will carry that fiscal conservatism, that taxed enough already mantra of who we are as Tea Partiers, and that blends into the other issues.
So is there one name that would jump out at you? Would Marco Rubio be able to inherit that title?
I don't think anybody really inherits it anymore. I think it more or less begins to build a more solid foundation across different levels. Across different levels.
Now, by that you mean that the Tea Party, which grew out of the 2010 opposition to the affordable health care, Obamacare.
Well, it grew out of TARP. Let's remember.
You think you started in TARP?
No, we started with the TARP bailouts.
Okay, so 08.
Too big to fail. 07, 08.
By the way, Mike Pence,
Yeah.
a Tea Party guy, because he was in opposition to that plan.
Right, and by the way, this is the thing, the Tea Party's not a monolithic, like any group.
Right.
There are some that believe a little more in this, some that are willing to give on that issue. The fact is, it's really more about Americans becoming more active in their politics and it's about growing the next generation of responsible officials.
And right now, that movement, you believe, is behind Donald Trump.
I think it's behind Donald Trump when they look at their economy. People live their reality, no matter what we're told. I mean, look, you and I talk on TV about GDP growth and all the macro level, the stock market. But you know what? Joe and Jane, or whoever they call themselves out there, if they have too much month at the end of money, if they have to make choices about whether my kid goes to this camp or that camp, or I've got to pay for uniforms, or I've got college to pay for, they're living in economic reality. Stagnant wages, somebody's lost a job, half of a job, you haven't been promoted. You start adding that together. The economy is what people live. The numbers are what the government does. You three numbers.
Well, the stock market's what the economy does. But
right. The Dow's 30 global companies. It's not reflective, even like the NASDAQ is, of the tech companies, other sectors, smaller companies, the spider. You know, you look at all these other areas.
All right. David Webb. David Webb, obviously at Fox News, but David also has his own show. Let me tell you, fun listening at XM Sirius Patriot. By the way, it's Sirius XM, not XM Sirius. Sirius XM.
That's right. You know, it's okay to be on the left and get it wrong.
Believe me, that's not why I got it wrong. It's because I always, you know what? Because I'm in D.C. and XM used to be in D.C.
That's right.
XM. Anyway.
By the way, those studios are still nicer than the ones.
They're very nice.
You've been in my new studios.
Yes, they're
Love
excellent.
having you there.
Sirius XM Patriot, and you can also get him on Twitter at David Webb Show. This is FoxNews.com live streaming from the Republican National Convention 2016, Cleveland, Ohio. Thanks for joining us.